How do you use the imperfetto in Italian? Are you ready to take a trip down memory lane Italian style? Say hello to the imperfetto. The Italian imperfect tense is used to talk about childhood memories, old habits, ongoing events from way back when, and much more. It's easy to use with just a few irregular verbs to remember, making it simpler than other complex past tenses. In this lesson, you'll learn how to conjugate verbs in the Italian imperfect tense, when it is used, and how it compares to other Italian past tenses. Now there'll be lots of real-world examples too, so you'll know exactly how to use the imperfetto in Italian. And don't worry about taking notes, I've done all the hard work for you. To help you to practice everything you're about to learn here today, make sure you download your free PDF cheat sheet. It includes all the vocabulary and examples from this lesson. Just click on the link in the description box below this video. Pronti? Are you ready? Iniziamo! Let's get started. Now what is the Italian imperfect tense? The imperfect tense in Italian, called the imperfetto, is a tense in the indicative mood. Unlike the passato remoto and the passato prossimo, which are used for completed actions in the past, the imperfect tense tells us about things that happened repeatedly, habitually, or an unknown period of time in the past. It's similar to the English past progressive, where we say things like I was with an ing ending, like I was doing or I was playing, or the expression I used to, used for habitual actions. Here are some examples.
Andavo spesso all'oratorio.
I used to go to the youth centre often.
Quando avevo la tua età, andavo a ballare tutti i fine settimana.
When I was your age, I used to go dancing every weekend.
Stefano amava cucinare per i suoi amici.
Stefano loved cooking for his friends. Now the word imperfetto comes from the Latin word
Imperfectum,
which literally means imperfect, and that's exactly the point. This tense is imperfect because it describes things in an undefined moment in the past. So we know that the action was happening, but we don't know exactly when it began or ended. That's why our knowledge is a bit incomplete or imperfect, if you will. Okay, let's take a look at how to conjugate the imperfect tense in Italian. Now, learning to conjugate verbs in the imperfect tense in Italian is actually pretty easy. Additionally, many verbs that are irregular in other tenses, like the passato remoto, become regular in the imperfect tense, meaning fewer exceptions to memorize, which is good news, right? Now, to learn more about how to use the passato remoto, you can watch this video lesson right here. Okay, let's start with some regular verbs. Now, to conjugate regular verbs in the imperfect tense, simply follow these rules. Take the infinitive form of the verb, drop the ending, are, ere, or ire, and then add the correct imperfect tense ending, as shown in this table. Here's a tip. You will notice that the letter V is a signature feature of the Italian imperfect tense. So if you see a verb with a V in its conjugation, it's probably in the imperfetto. Let's start by looking at are verbs. Verbs ending in are will look as follows.
guardare,
To watch,
guardavo, guardavi, guardava, guardavamo, guardavate, guardavano.
Here are some example sentences.
Guardavamo i cartoni animati solo dopo i compiti.
We used to watch cartoons only after finishing our homework.
Da piccolo mangiavo sempre pane, burro e zucchero.
When I was a kid, I used to eat bread, butter, and sugar all the time. For are verbs, the conjugation is as follows.
Ricevere,
To receive,
ricevevo, ricevevi, riceveva, ricevevamo, ricevevate, ricevevano.
Here are some example sentences.
Ogni Natale ricevevo un sacco di regali.
Every Christmas, I used to receive lots of presents.
Discutevamo di dove andare in vacanza quando ci comunicarono la brutta notizia.
We were talking about where to go on vacation when we got the bad news. Here are the conjugations for verbs with IRE endings.
Dormire,
To sleep,
dormivo, dormivi, dormiva, dormivamo, dormivate, dormivano.
here are some example sentences.
Quando stavi con me in vacanza, dormivi sempre fino a tardi.
When you were with me on vacation, you always slept in late.
In quel ristorante servivano il pollo con una salsa spaziale.
In that restaurant, they served chicken with a fabulous sauce. Now let's take a look at irregular verbs in the imperfecto. Now there are only 3 irregular verbs to memorize in the imperfect tense, which is good news. Now these verbs change their stem slightly and use the regular endings of ERE verbs. Take a look.
Fare,
To do,
facevo, facevi, faceva, facevamo, facevate, facevano. Bere,
to drink,
bevevo, bevevi, beveva, bevevamo, bevevate, bevevano. Dire,
to say,
dicevo, dicevi, diceva, dicevamo, dicevate, dicevano.
Here are some example sentences.
Mio nonno beveva sempre un amaro dopo cena.
My grandfather always used to drink a bitter liqueur after dinner.
Antonio diceva di amarmi.
Antonio used to say he loved me.
Mamma faceva la spesa qui.
Mum used to do the grocery shopping here. Now let's take a look at how we use essere and avere in the imperfect tense. Now essere, to be, is totally irregular in the imperfect tense, changing its stem to er and using unique endings. In contrast, avere, to have, is a regular verb that follows the standard conjugation pattern for ERE verbs. Take a look.
Essere,
To be,
ero, eri, era, eravamo, eravate, erano. Avere,
to have,
avevo, avevi, aveva, avevamo, avevate, avevano.
Here are some example sentences.
Mia nonna era una donna bellissima.
My grandmother was a beautiful woman.
Quei 3 erano inseparabili.
Those 3 were inseparable.
Anche voi avevate paura del buio da piccoli.
Were you also afraid of the dark when you were kids?
Da giovane avevo una macchina rosso fiammante.
When I was young, I had a bright red car. Are you enjoying this lesson? Don't let the learning stop here. Make sure you download your free PDF cheat sheet for this lesson, which you'll find a link to in the description below this video. Now let's take a look at modal verbs in the imperfect tense. Now modal verbs are conjugated regularly in the imperfect tense, just like regular ERE verbs. Take a look.
Dovere,
To have to, must.
dovevo, dovevi, doveva, dovevamo, dovevate, dovevano. Potere,
To be able to, can.
potevo, potevi, poteva, potevamo, potevate, potevano. Volere,
To want.
volevo, volevi, voleva, volevamo, volevate, volevano. Sapere,
To know.
sapevo, sapevi, sapeva, sapevamo, sapevate, sapevano.
Here are some example sentences.
A scuola dovevamo imparare le poesie a memoria.
At school, we had to memorize poems.
Da ragazzina potevo uscire solo fino alle 10 di sera.
As a young girl, I could only go out until 10 p.m.
Mio nonno non voleva né cani né gatti in casa.
My grandfather didn't want either dogs or cats in the house.
Già a 3 anni sapeva nuotare come un pesciolino.
Already at the age of 3, he could swim like a little fish. Now, to learn how to use Italian modal verbs to cheat your way to fluency, make sure you watch my video lesson right here. Okay, let's take a look at how to use the Italian imperfect tense. Now that you've familiarized yourself with how the imperfecto is conjugated, it's time to dive into the many ways it can be used. Are you ready? There's quite a few of them. Starting with the first one. We use it to describe what things were like in the past, such as the weather, places, conditions, and so on. Take a look at these examples.
Pioveva a catinelle quel giorno.
It was raining cats and dogs that day.
Il corso prevedeva sia lezioni online che giornate in presenza.
The course included both online lesson and in-person days. We also use it to talk about things we used to do repeatedly or habitually in the past. For instance,
A Pasqua andavamo sempre al mare a casa della nonna.
at Easter, we always used to go to the seaside at Grandma's house.
Quando vivevo a Pavia, andavo a correre tutte le mattine.
When I lived in Pavia, I used to go running every morning.
We also use it to describe people as they were. For example,
Lo zio di Mattia aveva una risata contagiosa.
Mattia's uncle had a contagious laugh.
Greta era una ragazza molto timida.
Greta was a very shy girl. We also use it to talk about something that was happening and then was interrupted by something else. In this case, the imperfect tense sets the scene and the passato prossimo expresses the interruption. For example,
Mentre andavo in ufficio, ho incontrato tuo fratello.
while I was going to the office, I ran into your brother.
Passeggiavamo al parco e ha iniziato a piovere.
We were walking in the park and it started to rain. We also use it when two actions were going on simultaneously. For example,
Al liceo, ogni volta che vedevo Matteo in palestra, mi scioglievo.
in high school, every time I saw Matteo in the gym, I melted.
Mentre Anna si preparava, Claudio giocava con i bambini.
When Anna was getting ready, Claudio was playing with the kids. In everyday conversation, Italians often use the imperfect tense to express something that they're planning on doing but haven't fully decided on yet. For example,
Stasera volevo provare quel nuovo ristorante, se c'è posto.
tonight I was thinking of trying that new restaurant if there's a table.
Domani andavo dal parrucchiere, se ho tempo.
Tomorrow I was planning to go to the hairdresser if I have time. We also use it to express situations where something was just about to happen but didn't. For example,
Quasi quasi ci cascavo.
I almost fell for it.
Per poco ci restavo secco.
I nearly dropped dead. The imperfect tense often replaces the passato remoto to make events feel more intense or emotional. This is especially true in journalism and storytelling. Take a look at these examples. You can say,
L'anziano si ribellava e riusciva a mettere in fuga il ladro.
instead of,
L'anziano si ribellò e riuscì a mettere in fuga il ladro.
the elderly man rebelled and managed to chase away the thief. Another example is, you could say,
Il 24 febbraio 2003 moriva il grande Alberto Sordi.
instead of,
Il 24 febbraio 2003 morì il grande Alberto Sordi.
on February 24, 2003, the great Alberto Sordi passed away. Now, in Italian, using the imperfect tense instead of the present or conditional often makes requests sound more polite and less direct. Now, this is used also when dealing with a somewhat embarrassing situation. Take a look at these examples.
Volevamo sapere se è possibile prenotare un tavolo.
I wanted to know if it was possible to book a table.
Scusi, cercavo il bagno.
Excuse me, I was looking for the bathroom. In casual speech, the imperfect tense can sometimes replace the past conditional to talk about what could have or should have happened. For example, you can say,
Era meglio se andavamo in quell'altro ristorante.
instead of saying,
Sarebbe stato meglio se fossimo andati in quell'altro ristorante.
it would have been better if we had gone to the other restaurant. And you could say,
Se seguivi le istruzioni, a quest'ora avevamo finito.
instead of saying,
Se avessi seguito le istruzioni, a quest'ora avremmo finito.
meaning, if you had followed the instructions, we would have finished by now.
In casual speech, the imperfetto is often used instead of the past conditional with verbs like
Dovere,
To have to
potere,
be able to, and
credere.
to believe, to express potentiality in the past. For example, you could say,
Dovevo capirlo subito che eri un bugiardo.
instead of saying,
Avrei dovuto capirlo subito che eri un bugiardo.
I should have realized right away that you were a liar. And you could say,
Non credevo mai che arrivava in tempo.
instead of saying,
Non avrei mai creduto che sarebbe arrivato in tempo.
I never thought he'd arrive on time.
Finally, when reporting on plans or intentions in the past, the imperfect tense can replace the conditional in casual conversations. For example, you can say,
Hanno detto che venivano in macchina.
instead of saying,
Hanno detto che sarebbero venuti in macchina.
meaning they said they were coming by car. Or you could say,
Ha confermato che veniva con sua moglie.
instead of saying,
Ha confermato che sarebbe venuto con sua moglie.
he confirmed he was coming with his wife. Are you enjoying this lesson? Don't let the learning stop here. Make sure you download your free PDF cheat sheet for this lesson, which you'll find a link to in the description box below this video. Okay, now let's take a look at some time expressions used with the Italian imperfect tense. Now, to give sentences that sense of continuity or habit, Italians often pair the imperfect tense with vague time expressions that don't point to precise moments, but rather express how things used to be. These expressions include
A quel tempo.
at that time, back then,
Da bambino, bambina.
as a kid,
Da giovane.
when I was young,
Di solito.
usually,
Di tanto in tanto.
from time to time,
Normalmente.
normally,
Ogni anno. Mese. Estate. Natale.
every year, month, summer, Christmas,
Ogni tanto.
every now and then,
Sempre.
always,
Spesso.
often. Here are some example sentences.
A quel tempo avevamo meno cose, ma eravamo più felici.
At that time, we had fewer things, but we were happier.
Normalmente si lavorava anche nei fine settimana.
Normally, people worked even on weekends.
Ci sentivamo di tanto in tanto, ma niente di serio.
We used to hear from each other from time to time, but nothing serious. Now let's take a look at how we use the imperfect tense and the passato prossimo. Now the imperfect tense and passato prossimo are the two most common ways to talk about the past in Italian, and it's normal to feel a little confused when trying to decide which one to use. But don't worry, let's break this down into simple terms. Now both tenses describe actions that happened in the past, but they do so from different perspectives. The imperfect tense is used to describe actions that occurred regularly in the past, providing background information. For example,
Da piccoli mangiavamo sempre la pizza con le patatine.
when we were kids, we always ate pizza with fries.
Da ragazzina vestivo sempre di rosso.
When I was a girl, I always wore red. The passato prossimo, on the other hand, is used to express events that happened at a well-defined moment in the past and are not that distant and still feel relevant. For example,
Ieri sera abbiamo mangiato la pizza con le patatine.
Last night we ate pizza with fries.
Ho sempre amato il colore rosso.
I've always loved the color red. Now, to learn more about how to use the passato prossimo in Italian, make sure you watch my video lesson right here. Now, interestingly, the meanings of modal verbs can change depending on whether you use the imperfect tense or the passato prossimo. Here's a trick to remember. Now, if the outcome of an action is certain, meaning we know that it definitely happened, we use the passato prossimo. For example,
Ho voluto parlarle in privato.
I wanted to talk to her in private.
Gianni ha saputo cosa dire in quella situazione.
Gianni knew what to say in that situation. Conversely, if the outcome of an action is uncertain, meaning we do not know if it actually took place, we use the imperfect tense. Take a look at these examples again.
Volevo parlarle in privato.
I wanted to talk to her in private. Now, we don't know if the speaker actually did it.
Gianni sapeva cosa dire in quella situazione.
Gianni knew what to say in that situation. Sure, he knew what to say, but did he actually say it? Again, we're unsure, so we use the imperfecto. Now, to continue your learning and to help you practice everything that you've learned here today, make sure you download your free PDF cheat sheet for this lesson, and you'll find a link to that in the description below this video. If you enjoyed this lesson, then you'll love Intrepid Italian, my series of online self-paced video courses that break down everything you need to know about Italian using my unique 80-20 method. More details in the description below. Now, if you enjoyed this lesson, don't miss my lesson on how to use all 15 tenses in Italian, and you can click on that link right here. Plus, if you want to master Italian word order and sentence structure, watch this video lesson right here. In the meantime, hit that like button, subscribe to my channel, and turn on those notifications so you get an alert when I post more video lessons like this one. Until next time, un abbraccio, ciao!